Alrighty, so here we go. Namala Mishlei, like we said, we have sponsors. Sponsored in order of my grandmother, who is Gronish Adichya. She's having a lot of nachas from all of her descendants, all the brachas and shidduchim and health and parnasa. Also is Mugdash, Ili Nishmas, Rav Yisrael Avram ben Reb Eliezer Zusia, Rav Meish Yeshua ben Rav Chaim Meir. So the ant, the Namala b'Mishlei, and Mishlei Shlomo Melech is talking about many different things that we can learn and be smart and so on. And he has a number of pesukim dedicated to the ant. So we'll read those pesukim and the Mefarshim say about those pesukim and other things brought down in other places as well. So there are three pesukim. The first pasuk begins with the words. These are the words of the pasuk. Lech el Namala otzel. Go to the ant, you lazy one. Re'ei drachea v'chacham. See her ways and you become smart. Now you understand why I said coming? So, what does this mean exactly? So there's the Malbim says on this pasuk, Leichal Namala Otzel. He says like this: Kol keiches ma'ase bereishis nutuim benefesh adam. All of the keiches of a person were planted in a person. The kol koyach midah sheyimtza adam b'mino mino bali achaim. If you ever see any kind of good midah in an animal, yadanu shekenimtza gam benafshe. You know that if Hashem is showing you this good midah on the animal, you know you have it in yourself. And now the Malbim continues. V'har b'midos yeshu bali chayim she'einam tzrichim le'motzorei chayusa. There are many midos that animals don't really need for them to survive. Hashem itbiya b'midah zu. Hashem gave them this midah. Sheyilmad ha'ad mimeno lasisken. Hashem only gave this midah in order for a person to learn from it. The animal itself doesn't need it. We'll see later more about this Maimer Chazal. So basically, this that the ant is not lazy. It's the opposite of laziness. The ant, as we'll see later, also that the ant doesn't really need the amount of energy that Hashem gave it. Yet the reason why it's there is for us to learn from it. He continues, "Anamola nota Hashem b'midas has rizus less safe in lichnois." He gave him this midah of energy to gather and collect. That a person should learn to gather chachma. And this is what Shlomo Melech is saying. You lazy one. You think you have no energy. You're not shaykh to move quickly. You look at it and say, there's no point in people that are rushing and getting things done. It's fine to be lazy. There's a sweatshirt over here someone has about laziness, right? I forget what it says. So Shlomo Melech is telling him, you person, go to the ant. Hashem gave it this midah, not because it needs it. You should learn from it and become smart. You learn how to be rushed, and not rushed in a bad way, but be energetic and be productive and don't be lazy. So this is what brought down from the scientists that observe ants. If you give a colony of garden ants, which is one of a certain species of ants, a big pile of dirt, in 1 week they're going to turn it over to an underground edifice, meaning a building that can come in this, compared to an ant, it's the size of a skyscraper, a huge building. That's how quick they can do things, and they're working all together, but they move and move and move, and they accomplish a tremendous amount. Thousands of insects are moving. It doesn't. We'll see later certain protein that it doesn't need as a mother, so that we'll see. So they move all these dirt, the specks of dirt, and they create these structures with networks of tunnels and so on. So we're going to show now a video at the same time. I'm going to put it on. First of all, this. I'll make it on double speed because it's not. You don't really need to see all the. Okay, so. I'll read it, and read Rabbeinu Bachai, and I'm going to read it in the meantime. This guy's pouring molten aluminum, as you saw, and it's going to soon dry up, and then afterwards you'll see what he does with it. But Rabbeinu Bachai, in every parsha in Chumash, he has an introduction to every parsha, a pasuk usually of Mishlei, with a whole drasha with Musar. So it's a very, very long shtickle, and in the next slides we'll continue reading it. So he brings the Shlomo Melech Darash B'Sefer Mishlei, Levar Klal Kol Amidis Toivos, כדי שישרחק האדם מן המידס המגונוס He says over there, all the good midas, people should know how to stay away from bad midas and get good to good midas. He talks about midas hazrizus v'ha'atzla, being lazy, and the opposite to be zrizus. Being lazy leads to many bad things. A lot of failures, a lot of problems are a result of people being lazy. And he says over here there are 4 types of laziness. Yesh otzel bebeisoi, yesh otzel begufoi, yesh otzel benafshoi, yesh otzel betoiro bemitzvos ubemaisim tovim. And now we're going to go through the 4 types of laziness, and we see. So in the video you just saw what the ants can do underground, and this is in a short amount of time, relatively, they can make this huge network of tunnels and all that. So the first thing he talks about is otzel bebeisoi. If someone has to fix a ceiling in his house, if he fixes it right away, it'll cost him very little. If he's going to be lazy and procrastinate and push it off, he has to spend a tremendous amount of money until he'll become completely poor. In a different pasuk, so this is a people that when you see things, if you're lazy, so even though, who cares, a small little leak, before you turn around, you have to replace your whole roof and sometimes your whole house because you were lazy. So that's one example how laziness will cause you sardis. Yesh atzel begufim, when it comes to bodily, physical needs. You take care of what you have to take care of, not too much, but you're happy with what you have. And you'll be in a healthy kind of way dealing with your needs. A person is too lazy to think about his food or all of his needs. Rely on a miracle. He wants, but he doesn't have because he's too lazy. This has become regarding your own bodily needs. People that are lazy to deal with themselves, with their own nefesh, with their emotional needs. As he explains that a person has midas that he has to fix, and he compares the midas kedimyan ha'adama. Just like when it comes to adama, to earth, sometimes there's ground, land that's teiva noichel heyovid. Like for example, in Iowa, the land here is very easy to work and produces it's easy to harvest. There's land in other places where it's hard to work it. Just because you live in a place where it's hard to work the land, you shouldn't just let it get destroyed. And just and be lazy about it. Shlomo says, someone that's lazy in his job, he's a brother of the one that destroys, because being lazy is basically destroying yourself. You're letting yourself get more corrupt and giving yourself more problems. There are people that are, so to speak, they have a good nefesh. A little bit of musar, a small fabrengen, a little bit of work, and the guy turns around and becomes a chsiddish guy. There are guys that it's hard if I bring and you talk and they're not interested in following what Seichel says to follow. But if you work hard on fixing yourself and you're not lazy, ain't safek, there's no doubt that every person will be matzliach to be meishach, ma'at mata lamidas tov, slowly to work on yourself. Again, if you're going to be lazy, you'll never fix yourself, you'll never grow. But if you'll be serious about it, then you'll be matzliach. I passed by the field of the lazy one, on the vineyard of the person that has no heart, no understanding. He compares the desires of doing things to a field, just like it's because it's also physical, it's also grab kivyachol. If you won't take care of your desires properly, and not just do whatever your heart desires without any kind of hard work of the guiding it, so this is all part of the third category of someone that's lazy with his nefesh and doesn't work on himself. And then yesh otzel b'toiro b'mitzvos u'b'maisim tovim. People that are lazy when it comes to chokhmas HaTorah, they're not busying themselves with mitzvahs and maisim tovim. Such a person, how is he going to be zochel olam haba? And this is what it says over here, that the mecharif also layachreish from the winter. The lazy one doesn't plow, v'shal v'kotzir v'oyin, and he looks at the harvest time and he doesn't have. Yomer ki ha'otzel einu mishtadel b'mashi yitztarech b'yisei zman shorod yishtadel b'y. The time when it comes to work, when you're younger in yeshiva and you have the opportunity, and you don't work on yourself now, later on when it comes when you're looking to have the harvest, to see what you gain from all your years in yeshiva, you're going to have oyin, you're not going to have anything. And he says over here, the continuous Rabbeinu Bechayik, him shall call otzel beizadavar sheyiyah. Any lazy one is compared la'ovid adama, like a farmer shuyeshev batel b'chayriv, that he's in the winter time, he's not doing anything. Shuzman acharisha, that's when he's supposed to plow, and v'lo yachrish. V'him shel elam hazeh l'chayriv, so the Mishlei is comparing elam hazeh to the winter. Shuzman mamshelas alavana, that's when the moon kivyochel has more power. That's when the sun shines. That's Elam Haba. We know that Shemesh and Mogin Avaya Likim, Shemesh was an Avaya. So obviously the Iker is that's when you get the rewards in Elam Haba. But in order to get that, you have to work in Zman Hazeh. Continues that his Medaik Shlomo Melech compares this the man of Golus to Chayriv. So he says another similar pasuk Stav Ovar v'Gomer, and then he compares it to another Maimer Chazal that Elam Hazeh is Deimel Erev Shabbos and Elam Haba is Deimel Shabbos, and we all know the famous quote that someone that works hard on Erev Shabbos will have Shabbos, and someone that doesn't prepare on Erev Shabbos, he has nothing to eat on Shabbos. Just like Shabbos is Yom Menucha, you can't do anything. You only enjoy what you worked for before. So to Elam Haba is Elam HaMenucha v'Agmul Elam HaMaisa, and that's why if you don't work in Elam Hazeh, you're not going to get anything in Elam Haba. And that's what it says weiter b'kotzer oyin, and he says this, and he says mei choyref alei b'choyref. So he brings over here that the lazy one in the winter time, he has an excuse. You know why I can't work hard now? Because I'm afraid of the cold. I'm afraid of the working hard now. It won't be good for me. And there's another pasuk where the lazy one says there's a shachal baderech, there's a lion on the road. So that's why Shlomo Melech says that he comes up with all these excuses. But all the excuses won't help him. He's lazy, and as a result, he won't work hard in the winter time when it's time to work. And when it comes to harvest, he won't have. Another quick video showing how they work together. This video uses a number of things. Yeah, I know. So this is where you can conclude that Shlomo Melech is telling us how bad it is to be lazy, and he says that the B'riyos people should know to stay away from laziness and should try to learn them to become productive and work together. And this is why he's warning us and telling us, encouraging us, go to the Namala Otzel and Re'id Rachev HaChakom Yemer Afal Pisha Namolia Pechusa Sheberamasim. It's the lowliest of insects. Nevertheless, a person can learn from Dvar Chochmah how to be Bezrizus, and it's gathering now for the future. So in the video, we're seeing how they work together, and they end up learning how to, in a way, become bridges. You see this particular example, but really, this message of this video can also be negate to other things, as we'll see later, how they end up all working together. That was all the first pasuk. We go on to the second pasuk. Shlomo Melech points out that that the Namala doesn't have any ruler, doesn't have any kind of a policeman or any kind of officer telling it what to do. So there's a Gemara which talks about Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. The Gemara calls Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta Askon Bidvorim. He was busy with things. So Rambam Rabbi Shrashi, what does that mean? So it says like this, that he quotes the pesukim that we just said. Leichel namala otzel l'reid rachev hachakom asher ein lakotzin sheiteru moishel. That is the third pasuk, which we'll soon see talking about Kaitz Lachma. So the pasuk says that the ants don't have any leaders. Amar so Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta said, Ezil echzi, let me go and see. Ivadayu, if it's takas so, the leis lehu malka, that there's no king amongst the ants. Ozal b'tkufas tamas, he went in Tammuz time. Parsei liglime yakina de shum shemini. He put his coat or as a cloak. He covered over a nest of ants. Nofak, and they came. One of them came out. Asachad eminayu, and we're going to soon see that there are certain ants that only come out at night. And the ant that came out, asnach beisimon. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta made a siman on that ant. Oh, that ant went back inside its nest. Amar Luhu, he told his other friends inside the nest, Nafal Tula, the shade came, it's nighttime. Nafku, so they all came out. Also, they came out, and then as all the ants came out, Dalyele Glime. Then Rabbi Shimon Chalafta removed his cloak. Nafal Shimsha, and the sun fell upon them. Naflor Levikatli, all the ants turned to that ant that he made a simon, and they killed it because it fooled them. Omar, so Rabbi Shimon Chalafta said, oh, I see it's taka true. Shmamino leislahu malka. Why? How do we know there's no king? The islahu, if they would have a king, Harmona de Malka Loili Bo, wouldn't they need permission of the king before they kill this other ant? So that was his right. Amar le Ravacha b'rei Rava Ravashi, Ravacha the son of Rava asked Ravashi, V'dilma Malka hava ba'adai. Maybe the king was there and he gave the command to kill. Inami or Harmona de Malka hava nakiti. Maybe they had permission from beforehand that if we find out that the sun is outside, the sun is shining, then kill him. Inami or Bein Malka la Malka. It was between elections. The previous king died. There wasn't a new king yet. You see that even we find by humans. There are times when people don't know that there's no kings and people do whatever they want. Allah, the Gemara concludes, rely on Shlomo HaMelech. He knows what he's talking about, and don't try to figure it out and bring rayas from these kind of stories. So the Tosfos over here asks a question that in Gemara Baba Basra there was a certain Talmud that he heard a verse from Rabbi Yochanan, and then he told Rabbi Yochanan, I never believed this, but when I saw it, I believed it. And Rabbi Yochanan said, you don't believe what Chachamim say? And Rabbi Yochanan turned him into a pile of bones. He gave him a dirty look, and an iron heart, and the guy died. So for that Tosfos, you see over here, you have to trust what Chachamim say. Kol Shken Shlomo HaMelech, have to trust what he's saying. Tosfos says, Shiny Hocha. That it's not that Rabbi Shimon Chalaf that Chas v'Shalom doubted what it said, but he wanted to figure out how did Shlomo know this, and that's why it wasn't like Chas v'Shalom denying it, and that's why it's permitted. This is what Tosfos answers to this question. How you talk and you're able to go and check things out. He's just trying to find out how Shlomo figured it out. The Mashal brings the Tosfos and he says it's a doichak because Shlomo didn't figure it out because he went around and he studied ants. Shlomo HaMelech definitely used Ruach HaKodesh. Rather, the reason why I say, says the Mashal, that this Talmud, that Rabbi Shimon Chalafta wasn't doing anything wrong, is because even though Shlomo HaMelech used the Emunah to come up with this understanding, however, people have to try to figure out. We know that Shlomo knew Beruch HaKodesh, but we also have to try to figure things out, and therefore Rabbi Shimon Chalafta went to figure it out. So this is two answers. Again, the question is, how you talking? You're going and questioning what Shlomo HaMelech says. Answer number one is Tosfos says he didn't question. He rather said, I want to know how did he figure it out. I know that it's true. I want to see. And the second answer is that no, Shlomo HaMelech used the Ruach HaKodesh, but he wanted to know if he wanted to be able to prove it from a scientific perspective, which is a very important marshal, because when it comes to Bechlal, things that Torah says, so there's a lot of discussion in the world today, in the past, I would say 50, 100 years, about comparing Torah and science. So from this marshal we see, yes, even there's a point in trying to show how science fits with Torah, because even though we know that Torah is not based off science, Torah, the Chachamim didn't learn science, and that's why they figured things out, but it's kedai for us to prove it as well, and that's what Rabbi Shimon Chalafta said. And then there's an answer of the Shalah Kodesh, and the Shalah, he doesn't bring the Marsha, but he also argues on Tosfos, what he's trying to know how Shlomo figured it out, Shlomo had Ruach HaKodesh, but he has a Geshmak Avert, he says, Hacha Shaini, the pasuk clearly says, Lech el Nemola Otzel. Shlomo HaMelech is telling you, go to the ant, you lazy one, and look and see that even though he doesn't have any officer, any policeman telling him what to do, he's doing it anyway. So the Shimon Chalafta was listening to Shlomo HaMelech. He wasn't trying to check him out, how he figured it out, or prove it also from a scientific perspective. He was fulfilling the instructions of Shlomo HaMelech. So this is a third answer, and according to the answer of the Shalah Kodesh, then there's no Indian to try to prove Bechlal how science fits with Torah, because only by here there's a special hirah from Shlomo HaMelech to notice it. But in other cases where there's no pasuk like that, then there's no point in going to figure it out. I'm sure Mechalafta accepted it. Rav Ashi later, the Gemara says, he was a Tana. He seemingly accepted that. Later on, they said what happened, and later on, Miroim disagreed and said, no, there's no proof from that because of the reasons.
Then why was he looking at how they had no officers?
That's what the pasuk says. Go to the Namala and see that even though they have no officers, Afal Bichain, they do what they have to do. So this concept of ants that come out at night, I mean, we see ants by day all the time. So there's an ant in Ontario. This is taken from an article from a person in Canada, where he's talking about a certain ant that's a nocturnal ant. That means that it only comes out at nighttime hours, and obviously it comes that when people are exterminators coming to get rid of the ants, they have a harder time looking good for it by day. So there are such kind of ants. One of them is called carpenter ants. Regarding the concept of cannibalizing, of killing their own ants, so this is another article from a different place that I found, where this guy basically was watching a certain ant, and he made the ant go away further from the group of the ants, and afterwards he took the ant and he turned it upside down. And it was being cruel, basically. It's the Stamazay. Also, the first video about the guy making the molds of the ants. He's basically killing all these ants. But people do that. Muslim Matan. Pete is not happy with these things. But really, according to Torah, it's also wrong, obviously. Just Tambar Sarbal Chaim for no reason. Even this guy said he turned the ant over upside down. And then he waited a while. And then, eventually other ants came over to it. I mean, it seems like it was able to get itself back up. And then the other ants came, and they came over to him, and they tore him apart. And in this video, we took a picture afterwards where they're basically killing this one ant. So seemingly there's such a concept even today where we can find when one ant messes up, everybody else beats him up and destroys him and whatever, because he's for whatever reason. So that story of the Gemara, I mean, I'm going on the Gemara. The Gemara said a story that we see, and I'm like finding what the Gemara said somewhere else. So the Gemara didn't say Lech el Namala Otzel, but according to the Marsha, it's good. This article is good. But upon the lesson is that if someone misbehaves from the group, then we can all look at his smile. Look at his smile. The guy that's misbehaving, we can all take care of him. Chas v'shalom, chas v'shalom, shalom. Shalom HaMelech, this is all about you. Regarding the question, how can you say that there's no kotzin and there's no meishel? There's something called the queen ant. So really, the queen ant is not really a queen in the sense of control. The queen ant is basically just there to lay eggs and give birth to all the ants. But as far as scientists have able to find, there's no authority or decision making, which means that there's talking no kotzin, no shaiter, no meishel in that sense. The Malbim adds on this taka that he says, this that we say ein la kotzin shaiter or meishel, he says it means that the ant has no seichel. Shekol ma she'yisa einay mikoyach haseichel and mikoyach hateva bilvad. And the reason why it says Kotzin, Shaiter, Umeishel, the three names, is because we know there's Chachma, Tvuna, and Das, what we call Chachma, Bina, and Das, and only a person has them, and an ant doesn't have any of them. That's what it's trying to bring out. So this is the previous video of the ants making the bridge. It's also to point out that there's no one giving them, directing them what to do. And Afal Bechen, they all work in synchronization. They all just figure it out on their own, which is very fascinating, that even though there's no Kotzin, no one telling them what to do, they just energetic and they work together, and somehow they get a tremendous amount of things done. Side building their tunnels like we saw, side building the bridges and everything else, and we'll soon see the gathering of the food. And the message to us is that we, Baruch Hashem, we do have a Rebbe that gives us instructions on what to do, so we should for sure learn from them to take their midah of zrizus and learn Torah and collect and gather, so we should have what to have provide. This is another article bringing out the same thing, that people don't understand. There's no scientific explanation for this, how they're somehow to work together without anybody. The people have come up with some, what's called an, forget the word for it, when you, algorithm that they answer, how they figure things out, but whatever. The majority of scientists understand that that there's no proper explanation of how the ants can all work together without anybody giving them instructions of what to do. But the Teva works together, and they're working together in sync without anybody telling them. Not at Kedekach. Thousands together building the tunnels and making such a bridge like that we saw before. But ants, it's unique. The third pasuk, which we saw mentioned before in the Gemara, is Tochin Bakayitz Lachma. In the summertime, it prepares its food. Ogra Bakotzir Machola, whatever. In the harvest time, which is before the summer, it gathered things together. So here the Malbim says that Kotzir Ukoidem Akayitz, Shekoli Mei Kotzir, the times of harvest, is collecting the Garinei Tvula Machola, collecting the grains. When the kotzir is over in the summer and there's no more harvest, now it's summertime, there's no more kernels to gather, it goes and it prepares its bread, as we'll soon see, it puts it in special places underground. If you have like a potato living in your pantry for too long, things start growing on it. So if you have seeds, they can also start growing, and it doesn't want things to grow, it wants the kernels as is. So it starts cutting off all those extra pieces to make sure that it should remain in storage in a way that it should be preserved. So this is a lesson to us that we have to go and be Yosef Chukei HaChochma b'divrei HaTorah b'libcha kol yemei ha'neurim, as long as you're younger. V'al toimar dai, don't say I have enough already. V'achar she'asafta kulam, you learn as much as you can, oz later, tavinem b'sichlecha. Like the Gemara says, ligmar inish v'ades bar schaparayin, learn and learn and learn, and later you'll understand. The Namala just collecting and collecting and collecting. So as in yeshiva, you just sit and you learn and you learn and you chaparayin as much as you can. And later, when you get older, you'll be able to learn it on a deeper level. But this is the time where you're expected to chaparayin as much as you can. As he continues, Rak misha torach be'erev Shabbos eichel b'Shabbos. Someone that we said this in quote before. Achar sha'asafta chukei ha'chachma. Now that you have all the basics down pat, then tachinam al debinoscha v'sichlecha shi'u lechem ha'nefesh. It will be the bread for your soul. All the Torah that you learn when you're younger. So this is an important thing that Nissen Nemenov, towards the end of his life, so he wasn't able to read. So he said, Baruch Hashem, I have what to think about. Meaning he knew a lot of Chassidus and Torah B'Klal. He knew Baal Peh. So he said, even though I can't read inside now, but I have what to think about. So no one should be in a situation where you can't read and be ill like that. But obviously, when you get older, you have less time to learn. So now is the time to chaparayin and not to be lazy, and this will help you for the future. And there's a Medrash Rabbah. This will be the video before. This was I mentioned before. I'm going to talk about this also. Again, I'll put it on 2. All right. So I'll meanwhile read the Medrash Rabbah. The Medrash Rabbah brings on the pasuk Leichal Namala Otzel and all those putting together. Now I'm reading from the Medrash, but you're going to see how it fits the video. Rabbanan Amri, Hanamola Nazu Gimel Botim Yeshla. It makes 3 floors in its tent, in its nest, whatever it's called. It doesn't store all of its food on the top row, because it's afraid that things might end up dripping. Not on the bottom floor, because moisture from underground. So the first picture you saw is mamish the middle one. I'm not sure if this is the same nest or not, but obvious you see even in this video that the layer on top is more dry or empty. There could be more, but this is what the mamish the medrash says the way it is kipshutai. And then he continues, that the ant typically lives only 6 months. Any creature, any insect which doesn't have bones and veins only lasts for 6 months. The kol ma'achala, all that it can eat in its entire lifetime, it's only a kernel and a half of wheat. It's collecting wheat and barley and lentils. Then he brings a story that Shimon Yochai said, Shlosh Meis Kur is a tremendous amount of grains. So that's why I said at the beginning of the show, I was referencing to this story, that they collect so much more than they need. They're working non-stop more than what they have. They don't need they're working what they need. There's a lot more. Shlosh Meis Kur is a ridiculous amount of grains, and there's nowhere near that amount of ants in each colony. And the Shlomo is telling the person, learn from the Nabala. And over there, the Nabala, all the extra grains that it has, nothing comes from it. But by you, all the Torah that we learn remains with us. We get Elam Haba from it, we get Schar from it. So for sure we should learn from it. Rashi brings down this pasuk that it says they collect its food, it's mazoina, and Rashi says we learn something else from here, that kol achas v'achas eina gezelis mechaverta, that ants don't steal from each other. So this is also a famous Maimer Chazal that Rabbi Yochanan said, if Torah wouldn't be given, we would learn gazel minimal. We start off the shir at the beginning with this Maimer Chazal. We would learn the importance of not stealing from ants, that ants don't steal. So what the science has to say about this is that even though ants will fight occasionally amongst themselves for food, but only with other colonies, or different types of ants. However, with their own colleagues, the ants do not steal from one another. They all work together. We saw that also in the video of the bridge. We see that again, that amongst themselves, the ants work together. They do not steal from each other. Again, this is something which Shlomo says you can go and look yourself and do research and find out that it's taka like that. He concludes by saying that even though it's a bir yaktana, it's a small creature, nevertheless it collects and collects. And the reason why it's collecting is because even though it's not going to live that amount of time to eat all the kernels out of there, however, it makes the cheshbon like this. It says, before Chet Tzadas, when Adam Rishon was alive, it was shaykh, it was before, it was supposed to be everyone should live forever. And only because of the Chet Tzadas, the people started dying. So b'meila, so the cheshbon of the ant is that I'm going to gather and collect, because maybe taka is going to be tchias hamesim, maybe things will go backwards before the chet, and we won't lose anything. So we're not going to die anymore. And if we're not going to die, we're going to need more food. And that's why it's collecting. So this is another lesson we can learn from the ant, that it always believes that Mashiach is coming at any moment, so it's collecting and collecting to prepare for tchias hamesim.